nor do we covet a foot of any territory. We do not want an expanding struggle with consequences that no one can foresee, nor will we bluster or bully or flaunt our power. But we will not surrender.
All right, I don't know if the backdrop here is appropriate for what we're going to talk about, which is the Cold War and the upcoming game East versus West, which is sort of a continuation of Hearts of Iron, you could say, I guess.
Yeah, this is actually a brand new game. I think the setting is perfect. You see all the concrete and all the things around us. It's sort of a Cold War-ish theme. Yeah, I think it's perfect. So indeed, it is a Hearts of Iron game, but it's a brand new game. We took a new approach, which hasn't been done before in this type of grand strategy game that we think is awesome, and that is to bring the Cold War with all of its nuclear weapons, the guerrilla warfare, the politics, the arts of diplomacy, the spying, into a concept that it's a grand strategy game from Biologic Paradox Development Studios. Yeah.
I was more talking about the fact that it's like when you finish playing Hearts of Iron, this is the time period that comes afterwards, and that players have really been wanting to play.
That is true. It's been one of the most asked ones. So when are you going to do the Cold War? And we said, well, we would be daring and we will do it. And so and here we are. And I think the Cold War has a it's very interesting because it brings in all the history from before World War II, even for many nations, and for other nations it's a continuation of what the situation after World War II created. That can be said for countries in the Middle East and also for countries in the Far East, for example. Europe definitely divided, the Iron Curtain. It has a historical aspect that I think many players will enjoy, playing a game that has a historical setup. But really, we don't want to say that our version of history is the correct one. We want to give the players the ability to we want to give them the tools so that they can play out however they think the Cold War should have ended. May that be that some people want to just create peace and other ones will try to see the world just burn. Yeah.
You always have that option, I guess, if you're a nuclear nation.
Definitely, you do that. You do have that option. And I think that's unique in that perspective. Many grand strategy games, you can build up a world and then you're sort of set with what you have built. But here you always have the option of wiping the board clean, and although that is terrifying at the same time, because it is sort of a means of last resort, of course.
It's like tipping over the chessboard.
It is, yeah, exactly. Like when you get mad and tip over the chessboard. So most of the game is of course there is this nuclear aspect. Most of the game it's the other aspects that are really important. You constructing your nation, leading your nation, the spying, the use of diplomacy is really important. The same, getting prestige to your nation, getting your economy to work, because it is important. I mean, you can't, or maybe you want to do the space race. You want to go into space, explore space in the sense that you will be building, getting prestige from getting satellites and things like that.
So you mentioned prestige, and maybe we should make that clear, because the end game, that's really what you want to have, a lot of prestige at the end game, right?
Yeah, sure. You want to achieve to have a lot of prestige, and that is important for any nation to have. And this is where we also make smaller nations something more than just a nation that's getting dominated by the major players. Here the smaller nations can work and have a real impact. If it's within, for example, the United Nations, where they can get the United Nations to act on their behalf, protect them, and use diplomacy in a sense that's really interesting and dynamic for the player, but also a lot of fun. I mean, screwing over your friends or your foes, getting the United Nations to embargo them, it's it's a lot of fun, yeah.
And you mentioned this a little bit during the demo that I watched, but the fact that the packs weren't set up when the game starts, that sort of seems to create a little bit of flexibility as to how the sides will actually play out in the game when you start playing.
Indeed, and it makes it so that the nations that form the factions, of course, the United States and the Soviet Union, that forms the different factions, they can choose which nations to get into the faction. And depending on who's leading the faction, there is also a possibility of other nations coming in to lead the faction. May it be, for example, Communist China if they choose to. Or Communist China can stay out of the Warsaw Pact like they did historically and not involve themselves in the same way. Just act as just another nation without the faction. But also they can come in and push the Soviet Union sort of and take over the faction, and then they are the ones deciding where the faction will go next. And it's the same way with NATO too. I mean, should the United States for some reason collapse or anything else happens, then there will be other nations taking its place. So this should always be an option, I think, and this is what I mean by giving the players the tools so they may decide how the Cold War ends. Yeah.
But you're also giving them specific scenarios where you sort of set things up in a historical way, because you have that aspect as well.
Definitely, definitely. So what we do is we give them the historical content, and we have chosen specific dates that we think are particularly interesting, not only of strategical importance, but also of gameplay importance. So that the player can choose which scenario they pick, and of course, like in any other grand strategy game, the player has the ability to use all means, but also to pick any nation. So, and this is something, they pick their nation in historical content, and then they pick their future, what they want to do with that particular nation. And since we have multiplayer as well, we can play up to 32 players, then, I mean, just get a few friends and let's get it going, so. Yeah.
Maybe some small nation wins the space race, right?
Most definitely. I mean, it was really the Kazakhs who launched the Soviet Union into space. So it's
they break up a little early.
Yeah, I mean, we gotta say to the viewers that the one we were demoing was the Arab-Israeli war, and there it went pretty good for us. The Israelis carried the day, won the battle there. Before, as I was saying, I got horribly murdered there for a while. My nation disappeared, but I mean, and this is all of it is part of the game, of course, and this is what we want. We want people to enjoy playing a nation in a Cold War setting, and of course, play with your friends. Yeah, this is actually what we aim for.
So where are you at in development right now, and what's next to do?
Okay, for us, we're in alpha stage. So about a month from now, a little bit more around there, we will be going into the beta, and from there, release is going to be Q2. We're aiming for end of April, beginning of May. Yeah. So we're going to have about a little bit more than 2 months of beta testing, and we look forward to getting the game released, and always we enjoy multiplayer a lot, so yeah, so we enjoyed it. We will be kicking ass in the multiplayer. Yeah.